Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to my porch, sophomores. Yes, we are here once again on my beautiful sunlit porch while we have a day where it's not supposed to rain this week. Um, so it's time for us to switch gears a little bit. The work that I sent home was previously for those 3 weeks. There's a lot of different skills, a lot of different things to practice. We had some short writing assignments, we had a couple of short stories, we had a few articles, and then finally we had a big extended writing assignment. I wanted us to hopefully be back in class by this point. And the fact that we are not is really unfortunate and has left me with the need to make a somewhat difficult decision of whether or not to move on with the Crucible. I would love to, but given the challenges of our situation, the number of pages involved in the Crucible, and some of the old vocabulary and the schematics of plays, I just think it would be a little bit too difficult for us to keep moving with that. So with that in mind, we are going to shift gears. We are going to transition into poetry, because that was one of the things that we had talked about as wanting to do before the year was over, and if we can't realistically finish the Crucible given our situation, I can still teach poetry. So this week is kind of an introduction to poetry. Those of you who have physical copies, which I think is almost everybody, the first sheet will look like this. It'll have a little bit of introduction, what our next steps are at the bottom, and right here in the middle has my contact information. So that includes my email, my phone number that you can call or text, and of course the link to our YouTube channel, but if you're already here, you probably saw that already. So just a little bit of an introduction to where we're headed. As we come into the poetry unit, the first thing I want us to do right in our introduction is I want you to list some poets that you have heard of before, and then of course in the column across from that, thoughts that you have when you hear the word poetry. Because poetry means something different to everybody else. Kind of like when somebody says delicious. Delicious is a word that we understand that delicious means something that's good, but I could say that sardines are delicious and my girlfriend does not like sardines. So, yes, she understands what delicious means. We understand what poetry means, but the thoughts we have when we hear that word are different. So when you think of poetry, what do you think of? Who pops into your mind? Some examples from like when we were all a little bit younger are like Dr. Seuss, for example, often wrote in meter. Some people think William Shakespeare, at least I always do, because he wrote so many sonnets. So just kind of jot down some of that. I want us to kind of get in this headspace of thinking about it. Also know that poets doesn't just necessarily mean someone you were taught in school. When I think poets, I think of Tupac, I think of Biggie, I think of Eminem, I think of musicians and rappers. So don't be afraid to list some of them as well. I just kind of want to get for this week with that list an idea of which poets you are familiar with. So that way I can kind of work some of them in, or if there are certain poets that are commonly taught in schools that we just don't like, we can skip. That way I'm not hitting you with stuff you're already familiar with. And finally, the last part of our introduction for the first day of this week is to write in 2 paragraphs. Why do you think we study poetry? And I want you to really think about that in terms of not just it's something we're testing on. What is it about poetry that is so enjoyable to people? Why do people think it's important enough that it needs to be on the English test? I encourage you to think about that. And I have my own answer that I will share with you next week when we come back from spring break. So that's actually technically about 2 weeks out. Remember that because today is April 7th, remember that after this, we will be moving into spring break. And then after that, we're going to pick back up with poetry. So just so we know where we're all headed. The next day for second day of this week, I have a little section on a couple of notable poets. 3 of the 4 of them are American poets. Edgar Allan Poe, Emily Dickinson, and Langston Hughes are all American poets. Poe and Dickinson are a little bit older than Hughes. Hughes was writing in the earlier 1900s and the 1920s and 30s. He is my personal favorite of the ones I listed. And the 4th poet I listed is Pablo Neruda, who is a Chilean poet. He was also a politician. Guy's poetry is fantastic. So I gave you a little brief list of all of them. I also included a link to a video on this channel of me reading The Raven for us, and that is just that way we can get some more exposure to Edgar Allan Poe's work. Also know that as we continue to move through with our different poems, we will have different sections. I will read each poem and I will talk you through them a little bit. So if you are reading and you get stuck, please come back to this channel. Definitely check out the videos for the poems of the week. This week we will be covering Annabel Lee, and we will be covering, which is an Edgar Allan Poe poem. And we will be covering Because I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson. Both these poems are great. For Annabel Lee, we'll do some close reading. You'll have to read the poem a few times. And for Emily Dickinson, you will have to read it and then go back through and do a brief comparative writing. So also in there, I've included some vocabulary that are words that I think are new or words that we might forget. Just to kind of give you a preview, one of them is sepulcher, which is a small room or monument cut in rock or built of stone in which a dead person is later buried. And that is from Annabel Lee. And yes, it said sepulcher, not sepulture or sepulchre, it's sepulcher. It's a really, really old word basically for a tomb. Not commonly used anymore, so I wanted to make sure that we knew that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wrap up this video for us. I don't want to spoil everything for the week. So look forward to the coming videos for Annabel Lee and for Because I Could Not Stop for Death. And also know that I have office hours every day, Monday through Friday from 1 to 3 o'clock. So that is a time where I am readily available to answer any and all questions that you may have. Also know that with that, there are times outside of that you can contact me. It does not mean that if you text me, at 4:20 or 4:30 or noon throughout the week that I'm not going to answer you. I will answer you. So if you text me at any of those times, I will still answer. The 1 to 3 o'clock time slot is just a time where I am specifically setting aside all other things to focus on your questions. You can text, you can call, you can email, whatever works best for you. I am here for you. Have a wonderful afternoon and stay safe.